Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive? This time, we're heading back, way back to ancient Aryavarta.
Northern India.
Right. Northern India around the year 1352.
It's going to be a journey.
It really is. And you know me, I love a good story. Well, this deep dive is all about exploring a fascinating YouTube audiobook we found.
Oh yeah, this was a wild ride.
It is, and at the center of it all is this character, Krishna Chandra. His story, I think, it's like a window into that era. We get to see how society was changing, especially this whole idea of education.
Education is a privilege, right?
Exactly. Who got to learn, who didn't. And the audiobook really highlights how things were shifting, you know? Cities growing, wealth becoming a bigger deal, and even like anxieties about traditional values changing.
Yeah, it's like a snapshot of society in flux. Sound familiar?
Totally. I mean, we're living through that kind of change right now. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, I got to mention this. There are phantoms in this story.
Wait, phantoms?
Yeah. Phantoms. Yeah, you heard that right. We'll get to that later, though. First, I want to set the stage. So, what really struck you about the audiobook in terms of how it describes Aryavarta?
I think it's amazing how it portrays this society grappling with all this change. It describes villages becoming these bustling cities, marketplaces popping up everywhere.
You just picture it, right?
Yeah, like these vibrant bazaars just teeming with activity. And at the same time, you see this tension between traditional values and, well, like a growing emphasis on wealth and power.
Which makes total sense. I mean, when you have all this new stuff coming in, it's bound to shake things up.
Absolutely. It's a mirror to what we're seeing today, right? We're dealing with technology changing everything, social norms shifting. So much is in flux, just like back then.
It's a human thing, isn't it? Adapting to change, figuring out what stays and what goes.
Right on.
So let's dive into this whole education system. I mean, the audiobook makes it clear education back then wasn't what it is today. It wasn't for everyone.
Not even close. It was super exclusive. You had the Kshatriyas, the warriors.
The rulers, right.
And then the Brahmins. The priestly class, the scholars.
And everyone else.
Out of luck. Education was for these two groups, period. It was like this rigid structure, you know, kept the power where it was.
And I imagine that made it tough for anyone who wasn't in those groups to, you know, change their lives, move up in society.
Pretty much. The system reinforced those existing power dynamics, you know? Not a lot of room for social mobility.
So why have these two groups, I mean, I get the rulers needing to be educated to run things well.
Sure, you gotta have informed leaders.
But why the Brahmins? Was it because they were seen as the teachers, the keepers of knowledge? Or was there something more to it, like maybe a way to control who had access to information?
Well, both, I think. The audiobook actually dives into how the Brahmins got to be the educators in the first place. And it's interesting, it's not just some random thing. They earned it, according to the source. Yeah. There's this whole account of how they supposedly proved they were worthy of that role. Of course, you can't ignore the power dynamics involved, too. But the source paints it as a mix of practicality and, yeah, maybe some maneuvering to secure their position. It's fascinating.
It's like this intricate web of like historical forces and social structures all coming together.
Exactly. And it really shaped the fabric of ancient Indian society.
And thinking about it now, it's crazy how different it is from what we consider normal today, right? Like, education's a basic right, at least in theory. Imagine if it had always been that way. Who knows what our world would look like?
Yeah, that's a big what if right there. I mean, this source really drives home the point. Access to education changes everything. It shapes societies, influences who holds power. It's a theme that keeps popping up throughout history, and even today, right?
Big time. Okay, so we've got this backdrop of change, this very specific education system, and now enter Krishna Chandra. And the audiobook really goes all out in describing him. He's this young Brahmin, like the perfect example of what a Brahmin education was supposed to produce.
A model student, I guess you could say?
More than that. He's described as physically strong, super intelligent, and they even emphasize his moral character, like almost saintly. It's like they're saying, see, this is what a good Brahmin education gets you.
Yeah, he's presented as this exceptional individual, definitely. And not just smart. They make a point of highlighting his physical abilities, his ethics, a well-rounded individual they're trying to show us.
And that all ties into how education could elevate your status, right? Like, in this hierarchical society, being educated was your ticket to a better life.
Totally. Krishna Chandra's journey is a prime example of that. He excels in his studies, soars through the ranks, and ends up landing, well, a pretty impressive role. He becomes the Acharya, the teacher.
For Prince Kosava Kumara.
The son of King Ballabha Kumara. Talk about pressure.
Right. Imagine that. You're shaping the mind of a future king. and you're representing, like, the intellectual elite of your time. No pressure at all, right?
He was in the spotlight, for sure.
Yeah.
But what I find really interesting is how Krishna Chandra actually goes about teaching. He doesn't just stand there and lecture. Doesn't make the prince memorize stuff by rote. No, he brings these lessons to life.
Makes them engaging, right?
Exactly. Vivid descriptions, storytelling. It's like he's creating this whole world for his student to explore.
And that's the thing that really stuck with me. The audiobook emphasizes how much joy Krishna Chandra gets from teaching. It's like this interactive style, making things come alive. That's what made him so good at it.
And the princes clearly loved it, too.
It makes you think, though, doesn't it? Are we doing that enough in our schools today? Making learning captivating? Or are we missing a trick?
That's a good question. Are we making kids want to learn? Or are we just focused on, getting the information across?
Because if Krishna Chandra's story is any indication, that passion, that joy in learning, it makes a huge difference.
It's like he found his calling. And actually, the source mentions that he takes on another student around this time.
Oh, really? Another prince?
Yeah, a young prince named Trilokhan. He's a friend of Prince Kasaba.
So Krishna Chandra's reputation as a teacher must have been spreading.
Seems that way. And it hints at his own eagerness to share his knowledge, Like he wasn't content with just teaching one prince. He wanted to reach more people.
It reminds me of those incredible teachers we've all had at some point. The ones who just light a fire in you, who make you excited about learning. It's not just about the facts, it's the way they make you want to learn,
Oh, absolutely. Those teachers can change your whole perspective. It's not just what they teach you, it's how they open up the world for you.
Yeah.
And Krishna Chandra, he seems like he had that quality.
He really does. But this deep dive, it's not just about, the happy parts of teaching. There's a darker side to this story.
Yes. The twist.
Right. We've been hinting at it. And this is where it happens. So we've got Krishna Chandra, successful, happy, shaping the minds of future kings. And then, bam, the audiobook throws this curveball.
Things take a turn.
A big one. The source suggests that maybe all this success, all this attention, it might have brought some negative energy his way.
Attracted the wrong kind of attention, maybe.
Maybe. Because suddenly, Krishna Chandra is overcome with fear and anxiety, out of nowhere, it seems. And he's convinced that the princes he's teaching, they've been poisoned.
What? That's a bit out there.
It is. I mean, we've seen this rational intelligence scholar up until now, and suddenly he's spiraling. It makes you wonder, what could have caused such a dramatic shift?
Exactly. It's like the switch flips.
And here's the thing. The source doesn't just say, oh, he was wrong, it wasn't poison. They point to something way more unsettling.
Don't tell me. It was the phantoms.
The phantoms, yep. The audiobook suggests that people who are jealous of Krishna Chandra, they sent this malevolent spirit to harm him.
Wow, okay. So we're really diving into the supernatural here.
Deep dive indeed. But it gives you a glimpse into what people believed back then. Like, the supernatural was just a part of life. Imagine today if someone said, oh, I'm being targeted by a phantom. People would think they were crazy.
Right. We'd probably call a therapist, not a priest.
Exactly. But back then, this was a serious threat. And according to the source, they needed an equally powerful solution. A yagya.
A yagya. So that's like a big ritual?
Huge. Chanting, offerings, the whole works. The source describes it as this incredibly powerful ceremony to ward off evil and restore balance.
Sounds intense.
It was a community event, too. Everyone came together, reinforcing their belief in the power of ritual. It's so different from how we'd handle a threat today.
Instead of calling 911, they called on the divine.
And the crazy thing is, the source says it worked. The yagya drove away the phantom, and Krishna Chandra went back to normal.
So the power of belief, huh? It can be a powerful force.
Right. Think about the placebo effect. Our beliefs can literally affect our physical and mental state. But there's another layer to this whole thing that really got me thinking.
Oh, what's that?
Krishna Chandra recovers. Phantom's gone. He goes back to teaching. But the source implies that his happiness, his sense of purpose, it actually deepens after this whole ordeal.
Interesting. So it's like going through this terrifying experience, almost losing his mind. It somehow made him appreciate life more, appreciate his role as a teacher.
Maybe. Like, maybe facing death, or in this case, a phantom, made him realize what truly mattered. It's like sometimes you need to stare into the abyss to figure out what you really want out of life.
It's like that saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Exactly. And maybe it makes you happier too, who knows? But it raises this question. Can facing adversity, even something as crazy as a phantom, actually lead to greater fulfillment?
It's a powerful idea, isn't it? I mean, we all face challenges, right? Maybe not phantoms, but we've all had those moments, those setbacks, those fears that felt like they could swallow us whole.
Oh yeah, those metaphorical phantoms, they can be just as scary.
Absolutely. But think about it. Maybe those are the experiences that shape us the most, the ones that force us to reevaluate, to figure out what really matters.
And maybe, just maybe, they lead us to a deeper sense of purpose, of happiness even. Who knows?
It's definitely food for thought.
It really is. So let's take a step back for a second and look at the big picture. We started this deep dive by talking about ancient Aryavarta, all this change happening, cities on the rise, traditional values being challenged.
A society trying to find its footing.
Exactly. And then we dove into this fascinating education system, how it was reserved for the elite few and the impact that had on their society.
And then we meet Krishna Chandra, this brilliant scholar who embodies, in a way, everything that education system was about. Rises through the ranks, becomes this beacon of knowledge.
And then, bam, he gets hit with this phantom, this threat that's both terrifying and, in a way, symbolic of the anxieties of the time.
The clash between the rational and the supernatural, that fear of the unknown.
And it all comes together in this story that's both, like, historically fascinating and also just so deeply human.
It makes you think about how much hasn't really changed, We're still grappling with these same ideas, even today. The role of education, what brings us happiness, how we deal with the curveballs life throws at us.
It's like those anxieties about societal change that need to find meaning. It's all still relevant, even thousands of years later.
And that's what I love about these deep dives. It's not just about the past, it's about understanding ourselves,
Totally. So, to wrap things up, what would you say is the biggest takeaway from Krishna Chandra's story? What should people be thinking about as they, maybe go back and explore the source material themselves?
I think it's about asking ourselves, what are our own phantoms? What are those things that hold us back, those fears, those doubts? And how can we, like Krishna Chandra, overcome them? Not necessarily with a yagya, of course, but by finding our own strength, our own sense of purpose.
Maybe even by embracing those challenges, those metaphorical phantoms, as opportunities for growth.
Exactly. Because maybe, just maybe, that's where we find true fulfillment. Who knows? It's worth exploring, at least.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this journey through ancient Aryavarta. It's been a wild ride, as always.
And who knows what we'll uncover next time.
Until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those phantoms, both real and metaphorical, at bay.